Welcome everybody to the Toehold MMA podcast. I'm your host Dave, otherwise known on Twitter as Dr. Bean17, and we're here to break down Dana White's Tuesday Night Contender Series Season 4, Week 2. But first, let's go and rewind and look at Week 1. We went 3-1 on the week. We had Jordan Levitt, who got a nice first round triangle choke. Then we followed that up with a sketchy Jerome Rivera unanimous decision. I honestly thought Luis Rodriguez should have stole that fight, but hey, we got our pick right. Our one loss of the night came as Mikey Gonzalez got knocked out by Euros Medic, and then the other big win that we had was Dustin Jacoby beating Tyler Flores for a three-round unanimous decision. Now on to this week's card. Our first fight of the night, we have Anthony Adams versus Impa Kassagane. This is a middleweight bout. Anthony Adams is 32 years old. He's 6'1", 76.5-inch reach. Fights out of Elevation Fight Team and is 8-1 as a pro. You got Impa Kassagane, who's 5'11", 73-inch reach, and he's 6-0 currently as a pro. Anthony Adams normally fights at welterweight, and the only other times he's ever fought at middleweight was when he was on the Dana White Contender Series a year and a half ago. And every time besides that, he's fought at middleweight. Currently, we have this lined at minus 190 for Impa Kasanganay, and Adams is a plus 165 underdog. Um, Adams is a very low output fighter. He's fought some decent competition on the regional scene. He's very good in the clinch. He's got some good leg kicks. He's very good, quick on the feet. He's very elusive. But the problem for me is he's just so low output. He's afraid to pull the trigger, and that I think could end up being a detriment as Impa Kasanganay is always moving forward. He's got some good striking. He's got some pretty good wrestling. When he's on top, he's able to control his opponents. So, some problems with Impa. He's a slow starter. He's almost he's almost got low output, but when he finally starts bringing it, he brings a lot of heat. He's very calculated in his strikes. My only worries with Impa Kasanganay is that he's fought low level competition. I want to say all the fighters he's fought are 500 records or worse, and all six of his pro fights were within a year. And he wanted to be very active during this year, but he couldn't because of one fighter pulled out twice in two events, and one event was postponed because of coronavirus. This is going to be a very, very close fight. I think the line is a little too wide. I think it's more closer should to be like a pick 'em to where, or maybe Impa being a minus 130, maybe 140 favorite at tops. I'm going to give the slight edge to Impa. I think his forward pressure, his striking, and his just higher output will end up getting him a win. Um, when Impa was on Dana White Contender Series last year, he won the fight. He was the biggest underdog on the card, and he was pretty impressive in that fight. Dana White just said he was too raw, too green. He needed some time to train and get better. But in the past year, he hasn't had that chance to really show it. He's gotten the train, but not really prove it in a fight. So at first, I was thinking if Impa wins, he's probably going to get a contract. But really thinking it out, unless he gets a knockout victory or a submission victory, I don't think he's going to get a contract. I think they probably might put him on another fundamental contract again. And but I do like him to win this fight. I'm not very confident in it. I think it's going to be closer than the lines suggest. But wouldn't surprise me at all if Anthony Adams comes out here and just was able to stick and move for most of the fight or land some of those big leg kicks to keep him at bay. But my overall pick is going to be Impa Kansagane to get the W. The next fight on the card, we have TJ Laramie versus Daniel Swain. Laramie is probably my favorite pick of this card. He's only, or we'll go to the tail of the tape first. TJ Laramie, 22 years old, 5'7", and he's 11-3. Then you have Daniel Swain, who's 29 years old. He's 5'8", 70-inch reach, and he's 29-1. Daniel Swain's got 30 fights as a pro. Um, Laramie has fought some great guys on the regional scene up in Canada. He's only 22 years old and he's already got 14 fights on his pro career. He's his two of his losses came to the same opponent. One was, it was Alex Morgan. It was slightly controversial. The ref thought he was knocked out, but he was going for a single leg after he was dropped, and I thought it was a bad stoppage. But they did a rematch, and again, Alex Morgan knocked him unconscious. But TJ Laramie is a very, very good wrestler. He went 5 rounds and a couple decision wins. He's fought some good BJJ guys, was able to, escape any possible submissions. He's very relentless. He's got good ground and pound. He chain wrestles. And then in the stand up, he's got some good kicks. He's got very good cardio. As I said, he's won 5 rounds. He's got a good right cross. He's got very good hands. He's a very, very solid all around fighter. And then you got Daniel Swain on the other hand, who's, fought a ton of fights. He's very good, wrestling. He's got some, or very good submission game. Got some decent wrestling. He likes to start off quick, but the biggest thing for Swain is that the longer the fight goes, his cardio goes bad, goes downhill very quickly. He's got some terrible takedown defense, and he doesn't check any leg kicks. I think this fight is TJ Laramie all day. You know, I'm going to have him in a parlay that I'm like. He's currently a minus 350 favorite. Swain is a plus 290 underdog. I like TJ Laramie a lot in this fight. I think, lock him in the parlay that I'll talk to you about later in this card. Next, we got a strawweight bout between Vanessa Demopoulos, I butchered that name, and Cory McKenna. Vanessa is a 31-year-old who's 5'1", 62-inch reach, and is currently 5-1. Cory McKenna is 20 years old, 5'3", and is 4-1 in her pro career, and she fights out of Team Alpha Male. This is a kind of going to be an interesting fight because both these ladies like to get the fights to the mat, where Vanessa doesn't usually go for takedowns. She usually, is willing to just pull guard and work her submission game off her back. She's very, very good. She's, highly credentialed fighter. She's currently the Invicta strawweight champion, and she's got a ton of submissions. Her last fight, she was getting beat until she pulled off the submission. Where McKenna is very young, 20 years old. She's very good at wrestling, very aggressive, fast starter, good grappling, good grounding pound. But that also goes right into Vanessa's wheelhouse of being able to, get those submissions. Vanessa wants to be on the ground. She doesn't care if she's on her back or on top. She's going to probably submit you. I think the experience of Vanessa will end up being too much for McKenna, and I ultimately think Vanessa is going to get that submission victory. I'm not super, super confident. Right now, Vanessa is a minus 165 and favorite, and Cory is a plus 145 underdog. I think this is a bet you can do straight. I think minus 165 is not a bad line on Vanessa. If it starts getting a little too much higher than that, I don't think it's worth the play, but I think right now at minus 165, it's not a bad play. Next fight on the card, we got Adrian Yanez versus Brady Huang. I might have butchered that name too. Yanez is 23 years old. He's 5'7", 70.5-inch reach. He's 10-3. Then you got Brady Hwang, 27 years old, 5'9", who's 11-1. Yanez is probably the most I wouldn't say he's probably going to be the most likely one to get a contract on this card. He's fought some very, very good competition. He fought his only two of his 3 losses came to Miles John and Domingo Pilarte, who are both in the UFC and both are very good fighters in the UFC. Yanez is a very, very good striker. He's got good movement. He knows how to, counter very well. He's got pretty decent takedown defense. It's not perfect, but when he does get taken down, he's able to get up. He has very good volume. He's going to put the pressure on Brady wherever this fight goes. And I think Yanez is going to be too much for Yang. Brady's competition that he's fought has been very low level. For the most part, what I'm seeing, he's a wrestler. He does throw some heavy leg kicks, what could play into this, but I think Yanez is just going to pick him apart on the feet, defend the takedowns. Brady is nowhere near as good of a wrestler as Miles Johns or Pilarte, who, Yanez was able to fight and actually do well against. In both those fights against John and Pilarte, those went to split decisions. So this is the second part of the parlay, in the fight. Um, Yanez is a minus 325 favorite as now right now, and Brady is a plus 265 underdog. You know, for the parlay, Yanez and TJ Laramie is who you're going to want to lock into this fight. And then we're going to go to the final fight of the night. We got in a middleweight bout Joseph Pyfer versus Dustin Stolloff. I probably butchered that name again. Joseph is 23 years old, 6'1". He's currently 7-1. Then you got Dustin, who's 28 years old, 5'11", and is currently 12-1. Dustin is currently a minus 250 favorite, and Joe comes in as a plus 210 underdog. This is a kind of an interesting fight. I ultimately think Dustin is too well rounded and has a way better ground game than Joseph, and I think he'll be able to get him. I think he'll be able to get Joseph down pretty easily and work his ground and pound and work his submission game to eventually, end the fight. Um, Joe got very, very heavy hands. If he is able to get on top of you, he does have very good ground and pound. He's super aggressive. He's got some strong wrestling. But I ultimately think that Dustin's takedown defense will be enough. And even if he is to get on his back, Dustin will be able to defend off his back, sweep him, and eventually I think we'll end up getting a submission victory over Joseph. So I think Dustin at minus 250 is a little too high. If he was a little around minus 180, minus 190, I would say lock him in as a bet. But ultimately, I think this is a price tag right now is a little too high for Dustin. You could actually, if you wanted to do another leg of the parlay, you could throw Dustin in there, but I would only do it if you want to be a little more risky. But my three picks for tonight are or my five picks for tonight are Impa Kasanganay, who's minus 190, TJ Laramie, who's minus 350. You got Vanessa Demopoulos, I butchered that name again, minus 165. Adrian Yanez, minus 325. And Dustin Stolloff, minus 250. Those are my five picks for tonight. Good luck on all your bets, and we'll see you next week on week 3 of Dana White Contender Series.